All right, welcome, and I will get started. Welcome to the class, guys. I appreciate you joining, and I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Todd Angelucci. For those of you who don't know me, I spent more than 30 plus years working in healthcare, including time serving as a medic in the U.S. Army. And over the years, I began to notice something that a lot of men don't talk about. Some of us perform at a high level. We carry the weight and we push through the pain, but many of us are quietly losing ourselves. So in my own journey, it forced me to confront this. A major health crisis I had, everything was finally kind of hit a wall, and at that moment, it didn't break me; it rebuilt me. And out of that experience, I created, which is now published, the Restorative Masculine Integration Theory, or RMIT, in the American Journal for Men's Health. And this model is designed to help men reconnect with their identity, reclaim their grounded strength. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Lead from purpose instead of survival. And today I work with men and women, which is really awesome because there's a women component or a female component who serve or lead or work in high stress areas, and helping them to kind of understand their internal world, heal what's been suppressed, and step into versions of themselves, which are is amazing. So just keeping that in mind, Mel Cortez and and Mel's here, it's awesome, decided to do this for the men in service and decided to, really kind of launch some of the concepts here. And one of the things that I encourage you to do is just arrive here, whatever it took you to get here, all of you, whatever things you're doing, just allow yourself to be here, and it's okay to set things down if you need to. And we're not we're not talking about, we're going to talk about some things that are misconceptions and some things that are challenges. And one of the things I wanted to say is science owes more to the clash of ideas than the accumulation of facts, by John Wheeler. And this is like sometimes we hold these facts very tightly, but the clash of the ideas around the facts are actually the place to start to explore and expand in growth for sure. So I always like to say that because I'm going to say things that may spark some like, hey, that's not landing too well with me, or wow, that really lands, or whoa, I don't really agree with that, but I encourage you, if there's some things that show up, to just explore them and notice what comes up. So, men who lead in high stress environments already know how to perform under pressure. And sometimes that becomes the challenge in and of itself. And I wanted to expand a little bit on that. It's it's the role that could often become our identity. Like, I'm the strong one. I got this together. I'm the leader. And when we get connected deeply to that, it actually can solidify in part of our identity. And we don't realize how we've built our entire sense of safety and what goes on around us. So I really wanted you to just start to think about that. So when we've built our identity around that, then it becomes a little bit of a challenge. And I just encourage you to, understand that when you're in these situations that you could lead with presence and all of those things. And the question I ask is, can you lead with presence when your nervous system is on fire? Can you hold connection when everything in you wants control? And can you guide people without needing to fix them? And can you lead vertically, which I'm going to talk about later here, and horizontally when it matters most? And so this masterclass isn't about some motivation. It's about kind of looking deeply at some of the things that show up. So men in high stress environments, and I've included women for sure, because it's good to know a little bit about both so that you can understand. So, men and women in high stakes role carry an uncommon strength, the courage to step in, stay steady, and hold the line when things matter most. And anybody in here that is in a high stress job or high stress environment can really often identify. But that same strength also comes with some silent battles. That pressure to perform, the habit of compartmentalizing everything, and that unspoken expectation to never slip, never feel, and never fall. And there's a way forward. There's a path that restores alignment and deepens presence. So that's the piece that I think is so important. So, like I said before, imagine setting the badge down, family, role, duty, all of that. Who's left? If the service or professional part doesn't come in, if that part, that job, or whatever you do, that role, the dad, the spouse, who's left? I often encourage to just just kind of sit with that. So the male disposition is a performance identity. As men, we often feel like we're only valuable when we're performing, fixing, solving, or showing strength. But when we live only in performance, we lose what we call presence. And when I call presence, we often think of, okay, let me zone out into like meditation, which that is. I'm not going to say it's not, but also just being present in ourselves for a moment without that nervous system taking us to places we may protect, but we don't create safety. We show up as useful, but not fully present as human. And I encourage you to sit with that for a second. And the one thing that I often ask is if we're inside, I often ask wives or females this, like if we're in a house and there's a break-in, right? And the husband or typical is there and actually providing protection and winning and solves it, does the person still feel safe? Do you still feel that? And it's really interesting when I started to sit with that a little bit, is there that internal safety even though that the threat may be managed? And it's a question that to kind of go deep and explore a little bit upon. So the female disposition is expression and protection. Women typically have been expression based and protection based. Historically, and I'm going to say this historically, and like I said, there's going to be some things that may arise here, have been tied to nurturing, keeping others safe, advocating, and raising children. So it becomes, is there this desperate need to protect or a desperate need to express? It's about the ability to do so with freedom. So we have these things that show up for us, but I often talk about this nuance of this desperate need. So the supportive part of that is compassion, advocacy, and creating safety, but the destructive is overprotectiveness, resentment, and self-suppression. And so when things get in these spaces where we get this desperate need or things over intensify, we start to see some of the symptoms come out. So what I'd love to touch on is just like how I started here, beyond the male female, but getting down to human, uh, performer or human. What's it like to explore being human? And I think it's funny. I've coached and mentored some people, a bunch of people. And one of the things one person says, well, what is that like? Like the experience of being human. What's under the uniform? What's under the duties? How do we manage and handle mistakes? How do we balance this presence with performance, right? And I call it connection. And in a code, we need to understand the difference. So consider this. Men, where in life or in my career have I felt the need to perform rather than being present? The desperate need to. And what would it look like to come from presence? And women, where do I need to express or protect out of desperation instead of freedom? The desperate need. And when I say that, I've mentioned that a couple times, this desperate need. Like when you could sit with yourself in this quiet space, it's like, have you noticed how you're showing up? Like, oh my God, I'm doing this. I desperate, you're not in your mind putting words the desperate need. It's more of an essence of you like, oh my God, I'm feeling this intensity. And what would it look like if I expressed and protected from this presence? And this is where I'm leading with that. So here's the common ground on male and female, right? You got the male with the overperforming, and there's presence lost. And with the female with overprotecting, there's lost vitality. And that's for both of us that shows up. And the same root fear of this not enough. People often say, I have this feeling I'm not enough, or, we often put words to things to, I think, we put like, hey, the imposter syndrome. We put these terms that actually short circuit the expression of it. I don't know if that makes sense. I was somewhere and somebody said, well, that's trauma informed care. And so when we give it that label, we actually are not like we're not embodying what the description and what the steps or what it actually feels sometimes. We short circuit it. So if we could sit with this, then it becomes a little, we could start to notice. Now, the one thing is, and I'm saying this is like just because it's there, we try to get rid of it. And like all I'm saying is to notice that it's here, that it's showing up, what it is for you. So the way back is authenticity. And so that's it, right? So authenticity is actually being authentic. Like, oh my God, it's here. So we don't think that because we want to exile it and push it away. So that's the step forward. So in application, if men tend to perform and women tend to protect, what happens on the job, in the profession? If that lens is, and I'm just saying this to just ponder in your mind, like so over and perform, it's we're trying to fix as guys, we're trying to be excellent, we need to be perfect, we're pushing in intensity. And then the women are totally trying in this protection mode. And sometimes men overperform, and sometimes women overprotect. In the ways that women overprotect, right? And men are protectors, don't get me wrong, right? But look at the nuances between how it's expressed in both genders. And when it comes down to it, we're connecting to human. So when we both get to human, we shift from fear into connection. So, what I wanted you to notice here is what shows up internally in the process of performance. So, when you notice, what I mean by this is when you notice you're in performance, what is what's showing up? Do you notice you're trying to fix? Do you notice a certain type of behavior? Do you notice what that expression is for you? So the other thing too is I run private men's mentorship group and I do some coaching in there. And I'm going to use this as an example. And there was a guy I was really kind of coaching, like pushing him a little to see that he wasn't seeing. So it got like I started to hold a mirror up to him. And it got a little uncomfortable. And I noticed another gentleman stepped in. He stepped in when things were a little challenging or when everyone was like, he hit this like emotional cool spot and he was like, oh my God, I see it. But he needed to say something. He like needed to like crack a joke or he needed to like share something. So at the essence of that activity, his nervous system had something that gotten triggered and he needed to put something in there. Like there was this, you hear this desperate need, like it's so subconscious at times. But if we begin to just notice it, we could see how our nervous system is starting to get kind of taken over. So when we get to human first, we don't erase differences like male, female. We just create room for them. And I am going to share a little bit here about this. And I spend sometimes coaching engagements going really deep internally and how this shows up for people. Now, so the one thing is that there's presence before performance, but notice I'll talk about the nuances around performance and then safety before strategy. I often get triggered by safety. We're all like, oh, safe. The word has been used so much, but it is a word that really means something to encapsulate here, but feeling safe enough, creating safety. So one of the things to connect with is like I talk about is learning to connect to human. So the challenge is actually connecting, is learning to connect. We think we know how to connect. And I'm going to share some things that I often do and share with people that helps open the doors in so many ways if you just start to embody this. So, in a normal, non adversarial relationship, that's somebody that I'm normally friends with, right? I've talked to a couple of you on here, like Robert and Bill, like normal person. There's a 40% rule of like why of people let have this guard down, right? In non-adversarial relationships, 40% of cooperation is withheld until a person feels understood or that level of safety is. So they keep this guard up. We call it like a wall of resistance. And so when that guard is up, it's hard to deeply connect with somebody. The inverse on this is if our guard is up, it's hard for us to help the other lower their guard or lower their resistance or walls of resistance. I'm going to call it wall of resistance. But we could easily get there. So we can't lead what we don't understand. So that's the purpose of it. And understanding precedes influence. So meaningful connection steps. I use 5 steps. It's a term that was coined by a mentor of mine and it's published. And we call it intrinsic validations. Dave Blanchard. I'm going to give him credit for this. This isn't mine. And so there's some of those. It's called notice. So it's noticing without narrating. And let's just assume that we're connecting with somebody that's it could be even somebody new. Like I use this all the time. Pay attention to what matters to them, especially if it's not important to us. Oftentimes we're in the lens. Have you ever had met somebody and you had a connect, you like talk to them like, wow, we really connected. It's because it mattered to you and you had some level of agreement or connection to that in that space. But I'm encouraging you to just notice with, even if you don't agree, even if you're not, like, it doesn't even matter, but it's just to connect to them and start to hear what's going on for them. Often, I'm just going to use a conversation like, hey, tell me more about you. Like, what would I learn from you on LinkedIn? What would I, like, what would I not know about you from following you on social media? Talk to me and just allow them to open up. And I'm going to share more about this in different situations. And so listening lowers the walls. And I'm talking true listening, and I'm going to talk to you. Just because we're quiet does not mean we're listening. Pause your story. Pause. Here we go. The fixes. Remember, I'm going to like sit on that energy for a second. The fixes around this. And also your reactions of you like, oh my God, right? So they may say like, oh my God, I've been dealing with a lot. My dad passed away or my mom passed away. And you're like, oh my God, how has that been for you? Tell me more. What does that mean? How has that affected your family? Like just getting them to open up. And that's creating that safe space by stepping into their world, right? It's like, oh my God, what's that like for you? Now, the thing I want to encourage you to do is, and I say this in a moment of decision, you'll see, don't relate because relating hijacks the conversation. It totally hijacks the conversation. And I'll share a little bit more about how that does that. So, not everything they share needs our toolkit or our fix or anything like that. But you keep asking these deeper level questions like instead of, and I'm going to use this scenario. So, say for example, like somebody shared to me like, "Oh, my mother passed away." And my mother happened to have passed away too. So it's real easy for someone to say, "Oh my God," you let them talk a little bit like, "Yeah, my mother passed away 4 years ago," and blah, 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 blah. That's relating because we're hoping to relate to something. And what that actually does is like, just imagine that you're in somebody's home and you're having a conversation and they're sharing, hey, like my mother passed away or something really deep, right? And you start to relate. What you're really doing is grabbing them out of their house, dragging them over to your house and saying, hey, look at my house. Look at this. Look at that, right? This is my experience. And that is something that I really like, I'm mindful of. Sometimes I just say that must have been hard, or how is that for you? How's your family reacting? And then if you do have something to offer, if you do, not in this like I desperately need to fix or anything like, oh my God, there's something, can I? And everything I often do and people that interact with me, I say, hey, can I share something that may be helpful here? Can I share an experience I had that may help here? And they're like, of course. And then I'll share something. Or if somebody, like if you're leading somebody and they're acting not so good, right? And you're having to deal with them and you have to have a conversation. Hey, can I share something that may be hard for you to take right now or that may be a little difficult, or something of that nature? I'm like, yeah. Well, when X, Y, and Z do this. So I'm sharing this connection of looking, of noticing what's important to them, rather, even though it's not important to you, creating this safe place of like pausing the story and fixes and like, tell me more about that. And then if there is a solution, you could offer it. Or if you're doing something in your career and you're trying to offer or promote whatever, utilizing this framework. And I go into detail on this in people's lives. And it's funny, I've worked with some people and just them practicing deeper levels of this has game changed their relationships, their careers, and businesses and everything. So here's what I was talking to. Relating feels helpful, but it takes people out of their story and drags them into ours. Connection is staying in their house. Relating is pulling them into yours. So just like I said, when somebody shares, they're inviting you into their emotional space. Relating shifts Relating shifts the focus back to you, breaking connection instead of building it. It's such a big piece. So in this connection process, another key thing that is super powerful that I've integrated in this is being able to utilize in this connection with others. And I'm talking deep connections with people. And I'll talk about this in high stress environments too as we get through this, right? Is our pain. Our pain is a deeper level of connection. To deepen this, we're going to tap into our own pain. And this is a piece that I think is super awesome. We often exile a lot of our pain I do some work with some people on just kind of tapping into this and using it as fuel rather than something that's holding us back. And to deepen this, we tap into our own painful life experience, not to wallow, but to learn and how it could connect ourselves to others. We understand it. And if we could see it in ourselves with deep humility and also like, how can this be helpful to others? It allows us to step into somebody's world and to connect deeper by understanding ours. So even if theirs, we could walk alongside theirs because we feel and understand ours, not in this painful, like, oh my God, traumatic way, but in this way of like, I see mine, I see yours. How can I walk alongside you? And I've had so many cool connections just in conversations where people have opened up and I've given them space. And like it starts to kind of heal this piece inside of me that I didn't know it was even there, or just like, and they just start to, and it's just such a cool connection. And people like they remember this engagement, this time. And I say this because we could do this in leadership and professions. Because, I had a professional, I work in healthcare, and I had a high-end leader. He said, every time in this meeting, this one person just goes totally kind of weird, like berserk, right? And it constantly caused him resentment. And in some work we did together, he saw some of his own challenges. And I said, hey, I wonder what her pain is that she's behaving that way. And his whole demeanor just shifted. And instead of being annoyed and like resistant and being like, oh my God, blah, 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 all the mental stuff, he's like, wow, maybe I could help her, or had a whole different mindset on this level of approach to her. It was so awesome. So I love to tap into this because it's a way we could deeply connect. And like I said, if we can't face our own pain, we'll try to fix it in everyone else's. I, t- I make this global statement. 90% of personal, professional, and business problems are personal problems in disguise. Often people are trying to fix their own internal stuff through what they're doing, through others. And I just sit with that for a moment. It's an interesting place to sit and just be like, hmm. And I hope in this engage, like if you're watching this, just kind of, I'm moving forward because this is like a lunch meeting and I don't want to go super long, but if you could just sit with this and just be like, what's coming up for me? Right. And what I want you to understand too, or to hopefully take away here is like, wow, like I could do this internally. I could intrinsically validate, or I could do these steps inside, like, hey, notice what's going on in here. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we segue through. And so, one of the things that I wanted to share here is being right versus being helpful. I talk about being right a lot because it shows up, right? Like, here is like, I'm being right. Like, the biggest connection cutter is being right. Because when we're right, somebody always is wrong. So it's a thinking habit where the mind prioritizes certainty, control, and validations of its own perspective over curiosity, presence, or understanding. And it shows up as interrupting, defending, over explaining, dismissing, steering conversations towards personal rightness. So its impact, it erodes trust, it limits authentic connection, and it keeps a culture stuck in surface levels interactions. So it's easy to say, like, hey, I'm right and you're wrong. Like the biggest example, we're doing this in 2025 is the political, like this or that, right? And we have these systemic thoughts that it's either this or it's that, right? Black or white. I'm right, you're wrong. But also, when we think we know, is a form of subtle being right. Like, oh, my belief on this is right. Or I think based on all these things that occurred in my life, when I interact with this person, they're going to do this. And you may be right, but also you may not be. And that's when we use that connection of deeper understanding. If you start to practice this, you're like, oh my God, people start coming out with stuff, and you're like, wow, I didn't see that coming. I didn't know that was there. Because our need to be right is our mind needs to create a safe place for it to be right. So we feel safe. So we feel comfortable. And it's so subtle. It's my need to be right. I had somebody else in one of my men's group who's like, oh, these people are going to have this against me because I have these views. But the views are okay. But the way he is it comes across as his needing to be right, which it was so under the level of awareness. But it cuts off where people are like, oh God, here we go again, right? But it's not that we're wrong. It may be right. It's an interesting dance, but it cuts off, right? And I can't emphasize that. So being right versus being helpful and when it matters. Like, okay, so being right matters in codes if you work in healthcare. In a code, you need to be right on doing certain tasks or somebody could die. Being right in a high stress area, if somebody has weapons or all kinds of things and you're under pressure, you need to be right, right? And that piece is so powerful, right? But in meetings and conflict and being helpful matters more. The dysfunction, and I use that term here, or the misalignment here, is that our nervous systems don't switch them on and off all the time. And so we run and we bring it into connection, and it causes challenges and with others or in our connection. And we'll talk more about it. And it's not that we're difficult, it's just sometimes our nervous system is unaware. And this stuff can be helped and can walk through this. So I want to segue that. With that being said, I could go into a whole conversation about being right and everything. There's two moments, and I'm leading into leadership and two outcomes. Fear-based leadership leads is silence. Connection-based leadership strengthens. So fear-based, if anyone can relate, of having an over-controlling manager, a toxic manager, or anything like that. And a connection-based leadership strengthens. One controls performance, the other cultivates potential. In leadership, most leaders believe their job is to get people where they think they should be. Real leadership begins the moment where you meet people where they are. There's been so much data on if you're starting to connect and you meet people where they are and start to nurture the best parts of them, they inherently grow. Not getting from here to here in our minds needing to be right. All of these things are control-ish. And I put a little reflect prompt here. Reflect on applying this to internal leadership. Are you fear-based leading yourself? This is a place to sit with. Are you connecting to yourself? And I do some work with this with people. Like, we start to validate inside, like, what's going on? What's the nervous system saying? What is? And it's such an awesome thing to watch people transform. So the leadership from control to connection, the old models, pressure, push, drive. The grounded leader, so when I term grounded, it's coming from authentic, genuine, a place of this nervous system, just of our own inner, helping others grow in this place. Fixing and noticing and telling, listening. Perfection, progress. This gets super challenging, the perfection part, especially people in high stress work environments where if it's not perfect, right? Perfectionism is a trauma-based situation based on survival. Like back in the day when you got into a fight or you hunted, you needed to be perfect or you died or better than the next, right? So that is a piece that's super important to understand. And so in our lives now, we're not hunting tigers all the time, but our job, a post, something on like a bad email or whatever that hits our soul causes this space to be triggered in perfection. And it's a process that just some settle. And so leadership is from get them there to meet them here, which I think is an awesome place to be. So I did touch a little bit just now on the self-leadership, the starting point of connection. So what I want to say, there's this reciprocal, right? There's this balance. I like to use the kind of the yin and yang, right? So how we connect with others will inversely connect how we connect with ourselves. And so sometimes the practice is connecting with others and learning to connect in here. But both work in a sense to teach us this connection. So it's not about perfection. It's about this alignment. It's about starting to unblock and shift some of these things that get in the way. I wrote that when I meet myself where I am without judgment, I lead from clarity instead of chaos. And this thought to ponder, here's another profound ponder, is when I'm out of alignment, when I'm leading from exhaustion, you know, or ego or anxiety, I start reacting instead of connecting. So just say that when I'm out of alignment, when I'm leading from this exhaustion, when you notice it, like this is going to show up. I think one of the biggest overarching things I want you to embrace is this stuff is going to show up. It's not bad. It's just there. Remember, notice because when we exile it, it has nowhere to go, and we can't start to work through it without just allowing it. So notice, like, wow, I've been reacting instead of connecting. And notice when you're there. No, just notice it. That's it. Notice how if you're trying to fix it, there's the next step. Here we go. Are you fixing it? Are you trying to fix it? Wow. Hey, I'm noticing I'm trying to fix it. How's that working? And just notice what parts of you show up. It's a cool place to be. So, what self leadership looks like? Reactive self is it needing to prove. And then I use regulated, grounded, and purpose and starting to understand that. And a lot of people talk to me about they feel like they're not connected to their purpose. They don't understand their purpose. They're not understanding it. And they think it's this grandiose thing, but it's not that difficult to start to lean and to start to step into it when we start to go in here rather than proving out here, controlling outcomes and then guiding the process, performing for approval, or acting from this inner alignment. Self criticism, self compassion, reacting instead of responding. So I've talked about this leadership, this balance of hierarchy. There's this vertical and horizontal leadership. The procedure requires, like being a leader does require, there is vertical hierarchy, right? We have levels and stages and higher leaders. We also, when we're, when we're in performing or that need to be right, remember, hey, in codes, I got to be this way, and this way. But when we're leading, we're maybe teaching somebody how to do a task, how to create, how to do something in our career or in our family. Like, hey, I'm in a vertical role because I'm showing you a way or leading in a way so you can learn. So that's where this stuff comes in, like in procedures and tasks and information or things that require learning and growing. We're in that position where we start to teach in that. Now, the horizontal connection is the part that I went through here. We're starting to connect openly here. It creates trust, belonging, and collaboration. The vertical, it does create order, accountability, and safety, right? True leadership isn't choosing one or the other, it's knowing when to shift. Hierarchy saves lives. It saves, I'm using it in that term. Connection sustains them. I love that. I put that there. So this is just a little diagram, right? Of like, and I do these visuals because I'm a visual person. So when I notice where I am, I could see what's going on, if that makes sense. So as we start to wrap this up a little bit, if I led with more humanity and courage to connect, what would me, my team, or my people in my life experience 6 months from now? If I just started to step into that, just consider that. So, a new way to perform. This is a new way. The I wanted to honor the men here in a sense that like performance, like we're into performance, we're into improvement, we're into being better versions of ourselves. So and it's not here to say, oh my God, performance is bad, but when this desperate need, this overperform, this identity. So I've learned through what I've done in some of the study and my own life experience and working with others. I created this system, or I started to notice a system that helps men transform at a high level in a way that's different from the grind we're taught. It aligns with three masculine intelligence centers: the head for clarity, heart for purpose, and gut for courage. And this process looks at the patterns that keep men stuck. And I'm going to be doing a free master class that's upcoming, and we're going to walk through some of that way forward. So I just wanted to let you know it's called the New Performance Blueprint for Men. It's lead better, live stronger, and stop fighting yourself. It's going to be a 90-minute masterclass on Monday, December 29th. It's going to be recorded. I'd love for you guys to attend, ladies too. It's awesome. And I put a QR code so you could register. If there's a glitch, just reach out to me. And there's the link too. So if you wanted to join, and if anything really kind of started to spark your interest or kind of sat with you, you just want to like connect with me and chat a little bit about showed up, any of those things, I'd love it. Here's some ways you could reach me. It's my website. Here is, I do a lot more on LinkedIn from this space. And also, there is my email address too. So I wanted to, I'm gonna press pause for a moment, and I could just leave it open to questions if you have some, or if you just wanted to jet out, that's great too. But I just wanted to say thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this, and if you're watching this on video, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And hopefully something part of this had, it sparked something inside you. So thank you.